Welcome to the Great Distraction.
Welcome back, people. This is The Great Distraction, and today the topic of discussion is European travels. My name is Ben, and with me today are my co-hosts Joe,
Heyo,
Thomas,
Aloha.
and today Rick.
Hello.
If this is your first time listening, welcome. We thank you for joining us. The Great Distraction is a podcast that focuses on a vast and random range of topics, and we hope that each episode leaves you with, if nothing else, something to ponder. Right off the bat today, we decided to bring Rick on because this man has traveled to several different countries throughout Europe and spent some extended amount of time out there, including, but not limited to, an entire month in Italy, as well as Germany, Spain, and a number of others, right? So we figured he could throw some really good input on the matter. And the reason we brought up this topic in the first place is because fresh in Thomas's mind, this man is not even 24 hours back from 3 weeks in Amsterdam. And any other countries? Was it?
Germany and Amsterdam. Well, Germany and Holland.
Germany and Holland. Okay.
Several other places in Holland besides Amsterdam.
There you go. So, I mean,
I didn't just
guy,
go to Amsterdam for 20 days and sit around and get high.
Although some have, and that's not necessarily
I think some of the
thing.
people I kept running into were definitely on extended vacations.
Nice.
Most aspire to.
Nice. So we figured, man, well, let's get it while it's fresh in his head, and we laid out quite a few interesting things to talk about as he was describing his travels and his experiences over there. And we're like, man, this is great stuff. So we wanted to start off with leaving the U.S., traveling outside of the U.S. A lot of people, including myself. So I'm going to play the negative Nancy here in a few of these aspects, just so I can, extract out and represent those of us who have never been outside the U.S., never had a passport. I mean, I've barely traveled at all, to be honest. And I know a lot of people have apprehensions, worries, concerns, whatever you want to call it, conundrums with traveling outside of the U.S. So I wanted to start off real quick with an overview of some of your guys' experience with just leaving the country in the first place, specifically to Europe. But at the same time, what you guys got any tips and tricks or ways to keep costs down as far as your travel goes?
I always travel alone. That's the number one way to keep your costs down.
There you go.
Don't bring 7 other people with you.
Yeah, and if you don't have to go with kids, that certainly
that definitely helps. But I mean, I've only had the one trip. I know, Rick's been to several different places. I mean, you probably have figured out some easier ways to travel. It was a lot cheaper than I thought, but I kind of knew because I've been kind of paying attention to it for years. Mm-hmm. But I was sort of surprised.
Yeah, do you have a special trick on how you get like cheap flights, or do you just book when you book, or how do you?
You buy them in advance.
Yeah, if you get them in advance and you're not flying during tourist season, it's going to be less expensive.
So what is tourist season generally?
Summertime,
when everybody's off, when the kids are off school. That makes sense. What about holidays? I would think that would be bad too, right?
Yeah, because like around Christmas, you'd have a lot of people going to or from Europe to go home and visit their family, whether they're European, working and living in the U.S., and then going home.
Yeah.
But you go like in the spring or the fall time, you're not going to have all the tourists that you're fighting with to get into like a museum and whatnot.
Sure, that makes sense.
Also, if you know somebody that's there, like when I went to Germany, I visited a friend who was stationed in the military, so I had a free place to stay. I had access to his car, and he provided cell phones for us while we were there as well.
Man, dang.
Yeah, so you got hooked up. Yeah. I would also strongly recommend if you're going in like a group of people, instead of getting hotels, get Airbnbs or rent apartments. Save yourself a ton of money, and you have access to a kitchen, and you can cook for yourself.
Yeah, that definitely would make a difference.
I think that's one thing too for me as far as like international travel. Having a little bit of I never really had a fear of it, but I was always like concerns of like, it's the very unknown thing to be in. To think if your car breaks down in Iowa, you're still in the U.S. If you break down in Turkey, that's a little scary.
There's no AAA to call.
There's no AAA to call. And you can't call call in a favor because your buddy can't come pick you up in his beat up old car.
Yep.
So that was kind of weird, but I don't know. It's weird to me, like the traveling thing. The definitely like booking stuff in advance as far as you can. Okay. The off season, and if you have any sort of friend who lives anywhere, and we've all had friends who are like, oh, I'm going to Italy for the summer or some school thing. Go visit them while they're there. That will be absolutely the biggest cost saver you will ever have in any sort of international travel experience.
Got it. And I imagine that pre-booking where you stay would help too, right? I mean, if you get
but
that
like
laid out.
Yeah, but when I was in Europe, I did some like last minute traveling, and when I went to Berlin, I was traveling by myself. I kind of was a little bit tired. You know, I've been moving and traveling for 6 or 7 days at that point, doing the trains and stuff. I was like, I want somewhere secure to stay. I was like, for me, it was important to go. I want a hotel to go to when I get here. I don't want to show up, not know the language.
Sure.
And so I did. And I was booking those rooms on Travelocity 24 to 30 hours in advance.
Oh, wow.
And getting good deals.
Cool.
The place I stayed at in Germany and Berlin, it was really right in the center of town. It was a little bit away from some of the big touristy things, maybe 5 minutes more. And I think I got 2 or 3 nights for like $92 a night. And yeah, that's expensive. It's $100 a night. But if you travel in America and you stay at any hotel in America, tell me where you find one for under $100 a month or $100 a night.
150.
And
that you'd want to stay at.
That you
want to stay at.
Motel 6, though,
Yeah.
or the...
Yeah.
Yeah.
No.
But I mean, if you looked around there, and there was, I can't remember, one of the hotels I stayed at was like $83 a night or something like that. And I booked it the same way, and I had looked at hostels, and I didn't really want to deal with hostels because I'm like, that's a dorm, basically. Yeah. It can be a dorm. And a lot of people who are traveling are that
also
age
a horrible
group.
movie.
It's a, yeah.
Yeah. You can get private rooms in hostels,
you
too,
can,
right?
and I did in Amsterdam, actually.
Okay.
So how do you figure out what to take? If you're going to go for 3 weeks, or if you're going to go for a month, I mean, will you pack everything every article of clothing you own in multiple bags, check them in and go? I mean, how do you plan for that long? I mean, the most I think I've ever done is maybe 5 days of camping, and it's camping, so you're not bringing, you don't need a lot of the modern creature comforts, right? But if you're in another country, I mean, for that long, I mean, yeah. How do you plan for that?
So I try to get everything into my carry-on bags because the less you have to carry around, the easier it is going to be to go from one location to the next, like if you're traveling between trains and whatnot. So I'll bring like 2 pairs of pants and like 3 shirts, rotate them. If you're staying in a house or renting an apartment, they often have washers and dryers there.
Oh,
so you can do all
clean your
that
clothes
as you're rolling. Yeah. There's no need to carry all these clothes with you. Like Thomas had mentioned earlier, when you're in Europe, even in the summertime, it gets rainy there. So you'll want like a light jacket. It's pretty humid, so you don't want a heavy jacket like we would have here in California, but like one of those like windbreaker things. Keep the water off of you, just keep you dry, you're good to go. I like my Merrells because I can go fucking miles on those things before my feet crap out on me. Yeah, you're going to need that because everything's paved with the cobblestone and stuff like that. I don't know about you guys, but that destroys my feet.
Yeah.
And if you're even remotely drunk...
Yeah, that's an issue.
I was trying to stay sober just to walk around because I was like, I'm gonna bust my ass. I mean,
It's
like,
really that bad?
There's a lot of old roads that are really that bad.
Wow.
Dude.
Okay.
And then they'll have a curb that jumps out of. You're like, oh, that's a curb, but the curb and then the actual sidewalk that's a part of the curb. Maybe there'll be a 6 or 5 inch difference between those two or something.
See, that's definitely something I would not have thought of. Like
you
wait
take
a minute,
big steps. I think that's why they're big movie people. And by moving people, they're just like everybody there is just like these big like dun 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 dun. Dun. I felt all the Dutch people were just like these huge, like I'll just mull over you if you get my way, But they were all super cool and friendly, but they were just they were marching.
So, without getting too much into public transportation, is that mostly what you guys rely on, or do you rent a car when you're there, or I mean, how do you get around?
Public transportation is the best way to go.
Okay.
If you're in a larger city, they'll have a metro, which are like short trip underground trains.
Oh.
If you're going between large cities in the same country, you'll have access to trains that'll pretty much be an express or even international as well. You can take a train from Paris to London in I think it's like 4 or 6 hours or something like that, and it goes right under the Channel.
Got it.
Or right under the English Channel. You can take cabs and stuff like that, but it's really expensive and it's almost not even worth it.
Okay.
If you have access to your map, which now all your cell phones have them, it's really easy to figure out where you're going. And with things like the metro and the train passes, you can, if you're going to be somewhere for a long time and using it a lot, you can get like a value book or a student pass where it's good for like several days or for several people.
Got it. So you
And
can
it's
buy
very
in bulk a little
economic.
bit, just like here.
Yeah. And also, their cities are much smaller. They live in, they're typically built into like villages. Unless you're in a large place like London or Barcelona, you can walk from one end of the city or the village to the other in like an hour and a half.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Right? So if you were to
So
hop
it's
on...
doable.
Oh, it's totally doable.
Okay.
We spread out big time out here.
Yeah.
They go up and keep it tight. We're sprawled out.
Yep.
Very, very different.
Talk to me about some if you guys had any shocking first realizations when you got over there. I mean, you guys had mentioned a couple of things to me that I was like, oh, well, I never really thought about that before. Like bathrooms outside of the U.S. I mean, tell me about
Well, napkins was one of the first ones, and I had another buddy that I was visiting there. He was the one that pointed it out. So, here we're very wasteful people. So if you go to a restaurant, there's napkins everywhere.
Yeah.
It's not like that there.
Really?
Yeah, they don't like to throw trash away. Just in general, whether it's recyclable or not.
Wow.
Most of Holland they just try not to make a lot of trash.
So what do they use, cloth napkins in?
There are some places that will do that.
Or you just don't use napkins?
But a lot of them you just don't use napkins.
Wow, okay.
And my buddy was like, well, they wipe their hands on their clothes. And I was like, well, maybe they're just not messy like you.
I mean, show me how to eat a hamburger that's not messy, though. I mean, maybe they don't eat hamburgers over there. That's the kind of thing.
They don't eat a lot of hamburgers over there, actually.
No, not a lot of hand food then. That's
Well,
finger food. Let's say something. How do you use? I am a napkin
I
user.
know.
Yes,
Because you're an American.
Yeah,
That's
I
the
just can't-
only reason why.
Probably. I guess I wouldn't be so OCD had I not grown up somewhere else.
Right. If you had to just deal with it when you were a kid. And I think that's the
Probably.
thing, too. I think a lot in that culture versus ours, I noticed that, like, I felt like the people were just a little tougher, like, in general. Like, they're healthier. They're, like, on the go. They're, like, they made me feel inspired as a person, like, watching these people. And just, like, dude, the skies are blue. The water's clean. The people are moving together in this weird harmony. We kept talking about it when I was in Zwula, this little village, because my friend had an apartment there. We were on a third floor apartment looking down, and like bicycle. All these roads they were just walkways, like alleys and stuff. They weren't roads, but they're roads on your Google when you kind of walk around, and it kind of weird, like. So, but these people are moving around, and there's really only room for people to walk and ride bicycles. But there might be a delivery truck coming through there randomly, or one Volvo or something, and they all just like intermingle, like. And there's no stop signs. There's no, and a lot of these places, you're just like, how are these people just like it's like their culture moves together as one. It felt like the weird sort of like motion.
It's like choreographed almost.
Very choreographed. And that hit me. That was one of the first things that hit me really quick about, like making a huge difference of like realizing something different about a culture. Because I was just like, man, everything just seems like it's going really smooth. Like there's always people. I remember the first time I went to New York, people were like, oh, New York, blah, blah. And I was like, seems like it's working for them. Like it was just weird. So that it was just that harmony of people moving around it really caught my attention.
Interesting. So that leads into the next question. You had mentioned earlier about personal space. So how does that fit into that?
So, like I had mentioned before, here in the U.S., we sprawl out. We have 5,000 square foot homes, and that's can be an average or maybe a little bit on the high side for some people, depending where you live. Out there, it's much smaller. You would raise a family in probably 1,000 square feet or maybe a couple hundred more. Their cars are much smaller. Their roads are much smaller. They are very economic with their space use. Wow. But then also in the social aspect of it and communicating and interacting with each other, we have a larger comfort distance in our communications. Even if you approach someone that you know and you like, and maybe you give them a hug or a handshake to say hello, you're going to take your step back and get your space back there. It's normal that you're standing essentially with your toes touching in a crowded bar having a conversation, and someone's going to walk by and bump into you, and it's just like Thomas was saying, it's part of the flow of the culture or your environment. No one really notices that it's going on, whereas here in the U.S. that would be considered rude.
Yeah, that's a good point, and because there's so many people together, you start to realize that like there's nowhere else for everybody. There's only so much space. We're all here, so you've agreed to be here. We all know it. We bump into each other. It's cool. Not a big deal. That's one reason I don't like going to bars and a lot of going out in America is because like. I know people are like, they're kind of weird. And if you bump into somebody in bars, like, oh, they're out to get drunk and start a fight with you. That's like the mentality at a bar here, and there I was just like, I wanted to go to places all the time.
Yeah.
Because people were welcoming and it was like everywhere was a good vibe.
Do you get beer spilt on you a lot?
No.
I get it here. And
Here,
inevitably,
yeah.
There's always somebody who spills beer, and we're not even that close to each other. So the first thing I'm thinking is all these people are super close to each other. Did you walk out smelling like beer every time you went out?
No, not at all.
Yeah.
People
It's
can
hard to
handle their
explain,
crap.
yeah.
Well, there's probably also less people stupidly drunk there too.
Yeah. Well, they
Right.
also a culture that doesn't look at alcohol like we do with
Yeah,
the 21
that's
age
what I've
group
heard
thing
too,
that they
yeah.
go to.
It's a marathon for them, not a sprint.
Yeah.
But also with the the proximity thing, it's interesting too because the Europeans are comfortable with being much closer than we are. You can take it a step further, and in Asian cultures, they are all up on each other. And if you're standing in line, say for like a museum, Asian people will come in and cut in line if you're not close enough to the person in front of you, and they'll bring
like
their people
driving
in
in
with
Thailand.
them. Yeah, exactly. It can be frustrating if you ignore the fact that that's how their culture operates.
Yeah.
You know, and I don't know. You just have to figure it out. It's part of the experience.
You guys mentioned bathrooms. Tell me about them.
Yeah, so their level of cleanliness is not what we consider normal here. So it's very common you use a public restroom that wouldn't have soap in the dispenser, or the sink would be disgustingly dirty. The floor around the toilet would be gross.
Nice.
You could tell the toilet wasn't cleaned,
Yeah.
you know, in probably a couple months and stuff like that. So that part is pretty gross. That, and they're also very small. So imagine walking into literally a closet that's got a toilet in it. There's enough space for you to step in, straddle the toilet, close the door behind you, step back so you can turn around, sit down. Literally, you can touch the door with your face.
Wow.
You're that close to it. And so you're just trapped in this bubble of thousands of years of poop. And no one's cleaning it.
I've been in some small bathrooms before in my time, and it does make for some awkward situations.
Well, you know, the thing I want to point out too with a lot of bathrooms and stuff in Europe is, you know, you're also looking at buildings that are 500 years old. So what they had in a bathroom 500 years ago, most of these buildings were built without any sort of plumbing or
So they've
kitchens.
retrofitted everything.
So all this stuff has been retrofit. So because things are so old, and that was one thing I thought was really cool because I'm into architecture and building. I was like trying to figure out, you know, hey, was that part of the original this, or like figuring out things. And some things you can kind of start figuring out, but you know, most of those buildings were built. There were never bathrooms intended to be inside a home or a structure like that in 1710.
Right.
You know, so all this stuff has been retrofitted and moved and changed, and everything being so close together. You know, one of the things I noticed, especially in Amsterdam, with everything being so close together, is like, okay, like we don't, they don't have 4-lane wide streets at every intersection. So the person 2 blocks away is 1,000 feet from you. Well, there, the guy 1 block away is like 400 feet from you. So so your world just gets smaller, and you don't have to go so far to get what you need.
Right.
Everybody's more connected because it's more of a community, and because things are much tighter together in smaller cities, everybody walks. Everybody, I mean, a bicycle is the number one mode of transportation for a lot of places, and it was awesome. Like, I was blown away, and to see some of the ways that people like retrofitted bicycles to carry things and do stuff. I mean, it was a neat, cool culture. It reminded me almost like a beach culture or a Santa Cruz versus San Francisco kind of weird thing with the bicycling and the weather and stuff. I don't know. It was cool. It was.
All right, so being that so many things are retrofitted, what about like climate control, air conditioning, and stuff like that?
The air conditioning isn't very effective, right?
Oh,
So,
if they have it?
Yeah. There'll be like these tiny little fans that they kind of just drill into the wall, and it just, unless you're standing next to it, you're not really going to feel it.
Interesting.
So
I hope you have a fan in your hotel.
yeah, it's not much better than a ceiling fan.
And
know.
is it hot over there? I mean, or is it?
No, the weather is amazing, and that's part of the reason they're more acclimated to their surrounding. Again, one of those better attached to the world and nature kind of things. But they're more acclimated to their weather. They're like when I was there, you know, late summer, you know, the week ago, whatever. I mean, I think the coldest it got in most of Holland was like 54, 58 degrees.
Yeah, another
And
thing
then
too. When he says a week ago, guys, we're like middle of August in 2018.
Yeah,
Whenever
so-
you listen to this,
So, and the hottest it got was like 78.
oh wow, okay, that is nice.
Yeah, but it's humid. That's the only thing.
Oh,
It's
okay.
colder,
Downside.
but it's humid.
Okay.
So when the sun comes out, you're sweating.
Oh wow.
But it's, I don't know, it's a strange, it was an amazing, it felt really good. I really liked the climate in
All
general,
right.
at least in that part. Germany was a little different, but it was still cool.
All right, let's talk about people, the people that you met out there and interacting with them in general. First off, I guess culture, food. How about food? Tell me about food.
I will say as loud as possible, the food tasted better than food I've eaten anywhere ever. Fruits and vegetables, I'm a huge fan of, like oranges. I love bananas, oranges, a lot of things like that. I eat salads a lot. Everything there was fresh. The farming was definitely, their farming doesn't have what we have, going on in our farm situation. So it just seemed like all of the food was just fresher and tastier and colorful. I don't know. I did notice that immediately.
Yeah, and in your like weekly routine, you wouldn't go to Safeway or Costco and buy a bunch of food that you're going to keep for a week or two. You would hit like maybe the butcher and go to the bakery or whatever, grab your bread on the way home, maybe pick up some veggies from the farmer's market on your way in, and you're going to eat that for like a day or two, and then you're going to do it again. Their refrigerators are super small. They don't store a lot of food, so everything you get is fresher and intended to be consumed like right away.
Wow.
There's nothing just sitting on the shelves. Their grocery stores are no bigger than our 7-Elevens, and you go somewhere else for your meat. You go somewhere else for your baked goods and things like that. And it's also not packaged individually like we do here. Like Thomas was saying, they have a lot less waste because they don't have individually packaged hard-boiled eggs. It's like, well, you get the eggs from the chicken and you hard-boil it, and then you take it to work and you open it like you were supposed to. Yeah. Whereas here you can get cantaloupe that's already been sliced and wrapped in plastic. It's a waste of resources. Yeah. Also with the food, one of the first things that I noticed, especially my first European trip was to Italy, is how much time they take to eat. For Americans to travel to Europe, if they're not aware of it, it takes it's a process. You don't just roll into your table. The server's going to bring you your drinks, and in 2 minutes they're going to bring you your food. They're going to let you sit down and talk for like 5 minutes before they even come by and offer to bring you drinks. And then it's going to be probably another 20 minutes before they come by and see what you want to eat. And then it's going to be maybe several different, what do they call? Not the entrees or whatever.
Portions.
Yes.
Appetizers or tapas or whatever, depending on where you are.
Yeah, you're going to go through several iterations of that. They expect you to be there for like 2 or 3 hours.
Wow.
Because you sit in there with people that you want to spend your time with. They don't rush through the eating experience like we do, where we're going to hit the drive-through, shovel food in our mouths on our way to rush home to see the next Netflix thing.
Yeah, or pick up the kids
I think that was
soccer practice or something.
Yeah, I think the restaurant thing, that's probably one of the things that we should talk about that I think causes problems for traveling if you're expecting too much. Mm-hmm. Like the friends of mine that I was with, some of them like would get mad about stuff like that. And I was watching it and I was like, yeah, you sit down and it might be 15 minutes before they show up, walk up and say, hey, you want a drink?
Oh, the speed of service. That's what
speed of service and stuff. Okay. And that is the way they do it. Cause you look around and like these people will have dinner and they'll be there 2 or 3 hours. That's very normal. You're not rushed out. But it's also more of like, you're doing it for a reason. It's that coming together with your family, having a meal, enjoying time together. You're done working. Like that's the real difference of one of the true qualities of their culture. And it was odd because I was picking up on it and I was totally enjoying it because I don't like to rush when I eat and I want to chill and hang out, and have a drink or something. And that's what they do every day. Yeah. And that was awesome. And to watch people that I knew who were Americans and being mad about that and seeing that, it was sort of disheartening in some ways because I was like, wow, I get it, you're in a hurry, but you're here. You know what I mean? Enjoy it. Like when in Rome or something. I don't know. But the other thing that was weird about the restaurant too is like in Holland, when you're done eating, nobody's going to bring you a bill. You can sit at that table for the next 4 hours.
So what do?
You go up to the bar and you say, I'm done eating.
Oh,
okay. I'm ready to
pay. You tell them when you're ready to go.
Okay. So you get up and somebody gets up from your table and goes to the cashier or whatever and says, okay, we're done. They're not trying to force you out or something. Yeah. You're there to buy food. You're welcome. Yeah. And so you feel more, for lack of a better term, you feel more welcome because you're like, oh, you came to eat, come sit down, hang out.
And then a very different culture around eating was our trip in Spain was entirely different as well. You would sit down with your friends and order a drink, and then they would bring you a plate of appetizers. You wouldn't order it. It would be whatever they're going to bring you. It's they call them tapas, right? And so if you hang out there, you eat your tapas and you drink your drink. If you order another drink, they'll bring you another tapas. It'll be a different plate or dish or whatever, but it'll be something else. And I believe typically the more drinks you have, the better the tapas will get.
Wow.
And I saw that mostly following that method in Malaga, which was a very old city in the south of Spain. When we were in like Seville or San Sebastian, it was a little different where you would go and order tapas and they would bring that out. Or if they did bring you tapas, it was like something very small like sardines or French fries or something like that. But that was how a lot of their restaurants worked as well, was you would just kind of go up to the bar and it would just be full of different plates of food, and you would kind of go through and pick off what you had, walk by, show the cashier, go sit down and eat, drink, or whatever, however many times you're going to do that, and then on the way out you would pay.
All right. So speaking of drinking there, tell me about their, because I've heard there's their mentality over there. You guys mentioned it earlier too. The mentality of drinking in general is different over there than it is here. So speak on that.
Yeah, definitely. So the drinking age, I don't know if it changes in most of the countries, but like in Germany, it's like 16. I know for certain it's 18-year-olds are drinking in the UK and everywhere else, essentially in the world, than the US. But drinking isn't done like we do it here. It's part of the experience of the meal, right? You'll sit down, you'll have your beer or a glass of wine with your appetizers, or while you're just hanging out, you'll have maybe another one. And you'll finish off with, like in Italy, they had drink grappa, which is like a dessert wine, not like port, kind of more like Everclear.
Wow.
Yeah, it's a nice way to wrap up the meal.
Right.
But they
Like,
say
woo!
with a big stomach full of pasta, you follow up with that grappa. It's supposed
Yeah.
to settle your stomach, so you're not burstingly full.
Yeah. It's balancing out the acids in your stomach.
Yeah.
Good culinary skills they got over there.
They got it figured out. They know how to live.
They got a couple things figured out. I'm going to say that for sure.
But also, like, the alcohol content in their beer and their wine is much lower than it is here. You can drink wine and beer all day long and not get stupid messed up.
Lower than like Coors Light or something? Or, I mean, how low are we talking?
not like that.
Because there's some piss water out
Yeah.
there that is like basically drinking piss water.
Yeah, but you're going to be able to drink all day,
Okay.
without getting too hammered.
Yeah.
Obviously you can make a race out of it if you wanted to and make an ass of yourself.
Sure,
Yeah.
sure.
But they don't drink like that. That's not in their culture. And they teach their children that.
Mm-hmm.
It's not uncommon that they'll give a child a beer and let them try it, but then by the time they're 16, they're allowed to drink beer and wine. And then I think by the time they're 18, they can drink hard alcohol.
Got it.
They demystify it there. It's more part of their culture, right? Especially wine.
Yeah.
And definitely because the whole thing about meals and time together and stuff, and just kind of they like the Dutch do a lot more just chilling than we do in America for sure.
Yeah, it's very common. Just walk down the street and there's people hanging out in cafes, and they clearly work in this city. And a guy's just hanging out there, doesn't have a cup of coffee at his table. He's just playing on his phone or watching the world go by. That's just the way to do it. It's a very interesting experience when you can just go there and sit and watch how the culture happens, how everybody's doing things. And it coming home, it makes you realize, like, fuck, we've got this backwards.
Right.
We rush to work to spend our life there, whereas they, saunter in, do their thing, go home.
That's how I do it.
They work to live.
They
We
stay
live
up
to
much
work.
later.
The state.
Yeah.
Stay up much later
Stay
too.
up later and hang out and drink.
Eat dinner later and
Yeah.
more of the family unit experience kind of thing, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, family's
they-
very
yeah.
strong.
They don't have a schedule like we do. We're like, you got to be up and you got to be at work. I mean, everything's like, run. They're totally the opposite. And you can, I feel like that's another reason they're so healthy, is because they're not stressing themselves
Not
out.
stressing.
Yeah.
That's a good lead into what I wanted to say. I talked about socializing with these people. I mean, how
These
is it?
people, yeah,
with
it's like they're murderers.
Well, these people, I mean, those types of people are in this different mindset. How is it talking to people when you're in a crowded bar that you don't know? I mean, do you interact with them? Do they interact with you? I mean, what's that like?
I think you feel. How can I describe it? Like at first, because I was traveling by myself, and I went to a couple bars, especially like in Amsterdam, as I was walking around, and And I was just like, I'm just going to say hi to people, just see what their reaction is. I'm not that timid anyway, and I didn't really care, And so I would just like randomly say something to somebody and be like, hey, how's it going? Or I'd sit down and be like, hey. And most people, hello is hello without the H and most of Dutch. And so after a while, I just started saying it because you just start saying it. And so you're more friendly. And when you say it, it's like saying the word almost made you happy because you were going to get the same response back or something. I don't know. It was just kind of strange. But it was, if you didn't want to talk to people, it's like they sensed it, And if you talk to people, it's like they would talk back. It's like you got out of it what you gave. Whereas here, I feel like when you go to places, people are kind of snobbish in general, or talking, or trying to, sitting down. Like when I was in a bar in Amsterdam, hanging out, and I'm sitting at a table, and there's one extra seat, and this older guy, he's probably like 60. He's like, it's a metal bar, and he walks up and he's like drinking. He's sitting there, and and I was just, and people like you're saying before, Rick, about how if you go out or something, everybody's bumping into each other, everybody's really close. So they're communicating verbally is just as open. I mean, because they're like, hey, how's it going? They're right in your face. They don't care if you got bad breath. They do too. I mean, it's right up on you, which is crazy at first because I was just like, whoa, and there's a lot of people around or bumping into you, and because, Americans are trained that they have to have this distance around them for safety or whatever this BS is. And so that's gone. So that's a big barrier for a lot of people. When that's gone, you feel a little bit intimidated. But you shouldn't because it's so much more welcoming. And so I was just like, I'm going to be nice to people, and unless there's a reason for me not to be. I mean, I'm on vacation. And this dude was like, hey, anybody sitting there? And I'm like, no, he's just down. Or, loud bar. Randomly start talking. This dude's here with his wife. She's with her sister shopping. He stopped in for a drink. He lives in Spain, Barcelona. We start talking about Barcelona. There's some other dude's walking around by himself. And he says, hey, can I sit here? Because people if there's seats there, people are going to sit there because you don't have the luxury of, being a 2,000 square foot bar. The bar you're in is like 400 square feet. And a lot of people still want to go there, so everybody crams in. That's just the way it is. So it was kind of weird getting welcoming, and you just talk to people. And I felt like I try to do that sometimes in America, but I usually don't, and it's not very successful unless I'm somewhere where I already know people.
Yeah, I agree. I do feel it was more successful when I was traveling there. But I think part of that is also because when I'm on vacation, I put out that vibe.
See, and that's what I'm wondering. So I've heard this mentality before. I've also heard it within America. Oh, I went to Portland or I went to New York, and everybody talks, and then I've gone there in some of these places, and nobody said anything to me. It was no different than being here. So I wonder when I hear people say that about other countries, is this just your perception because you're sort of like you're in La La Land right now, right? You want this to be happy, you want this to be an amazing experience. But is your want actually making it more than it is? And that's why I wanted to play devil's advocate on this aspect, because I wanted to know, do these people actually come up and talk to you, or were you just more willing to?
No, people aren't just walking up, hey, how's it going, Ben? You're an awesome person.
So,
welcome to Europe.
What I wonder is, can we extract that same mentality here in America? We just don't do it because our mentality here is stay away from me, I need my personal space.
Well, I think that's some of it, and that's what I was saying before. Like, I treat people exactly the same no matter where I'm at.
And that's how I would be too, but it's the response that you get back from them, and that's what
I got back from that was way better.
And that's what I'm wondering is different. I'm going to treat them the same as if I'm here, there, everywhere, anywhere. But what I wonder is it actually different in how I am treated in that same atmosphere? Is it actually any different? That's what I'm trying to extract.
Well, here's a question: when you're out in public, how many people were buried in their cell phones, or how many groups or tables of people were all buried in their cell phones? Because you see that a lot here.
Okay, so that's something I did notice, and I was trying to remind myself to pay attention to while I was traveling. And I would say, if I was going to give you a percentage of the random people that are on their phones that I see in America or in a bar in Sacramento or out in public in Sacramento, I would say out of 100%, I feel like I see 60% of people with a phone in their hand.
Definitely, I'd agree with that. No problem.
And so there, I would say it was probably 25 or 30.
Okay.
You still saw it, and there are places where you saw it all the time, especially touristy areas, because those weren't people from that area.
They're probably looking. They could be looking at their phones for a lot of different reasons other than social media.
Like in Amsterdam, you can't take what's going on in people, because everybody's stopping every 2 feet. Oh my God, look at this building. Oh, that's 800 years old. Oh my God.
They're all taking pictures, and they're also using their mapping software, so you can't hold that against them.
So it's and that's the thing I say too about Amsterdam was that it felt a lot like San Francisco.
It's a tour. Well, it's a tourist
place.
It's a total tourist place.
But just that aspect alone, I think, lends greatly to a more communal environment versus the segregation I think that we feel here sometimes in bar sittings,
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you could talk to people if you wanted to, or you could not. It was like people were okay with you doing whatever you wanted to do.
Yeah.
I've been in bars in America by myself just because I'm like working out of town or doing something, or it's right next to my hotel, and and it happened to be in Vegas one time, and I was just all of a sudden this dude just like mean mugging me from the other side of the bar, and I'm like, what the hell is this guy's problem? And come up and like say some smart comment or something. I'm like, what the hell? Like that's happened to me in numerous cities in America.
Wow.
Going to bars or something, or just somebody, some odd thing happened, or I don't know.
I've been by myself a few times in a number of bars, and I don't think anyone ever looked at me odd. Nobody definitely nobody ever said
Nobody
anything
came
to me.
up and said something
No,
weird to
not
you.
at all. But then I never had any issues. But and I don't know. Yeah. Okay, so that was an interesting question that I was curious about. You guys had mentioned when we were talking before we started recording the general education level of the people that you were conversing with and the people that you met. Give me a comment on that. How is that different, or how did that feel different, and to you guys?
So, under their social system, if you score high enough in high school, you go to university for free, right? And they'll pay like your stipend for your tuition and your housing and whatnot, and
Wow.
you can go on through grad school like that.
It's like a scholarship, basically, if you did good in high school.
Yeah.
Wow.
Right. So in some circles, it does seem like they're all highly educated. But to counter that, also, they have a very strong respect for tradescraft. They respect their butchers. That's an honorable career you can support a family on. Thomas will probably mention the mechanics and auto technicians. Craftsmen, or I'm sorry, I'm shit to bed
It's
here.
like probably like
you know what I'm
metalworking,
talking about.
woodworking, anything
Yeah.
where you're actually using
What
your
trade?
hands
What
to-
what we call trades here.
Yeah, and what
and
we
it- what
kind
we
of
consider
look
it-
down on, nobody really seems to
I-
support
and-
half the time.
Yeah, a lot of people don't support it. I kind of, I had an experience where, I came out of high school and didn't know what I wanted to do, flunked out of art school, and then went to a mechanic school to work on motorcycles. One of the reasons I stopped doing it as a career was because people treated me really crappy.
Yeah.
Like everybody.
You're a grease monkey here.
You're a grease monkey. And
Yeah.
that was the response. And I was like, wow, I know how to do all these things that you don't. I'm the
Nope.
one bailing
Yep.
you out all the time, and I'm
Yep.
the reason we're making money, but I'm the lowest person on the peg here.
Yeah.
Like socially or whatever. And it's just kind of weird. And over there, learning how to do something and how to fix things, or be mechanically inclined, whether you're doing body work on a car or being a butcher or any of these things, these are all valuable skills that for centuries we've valued because they help the community or whatever. Think about being a butcher would have been like in the 1700s versus now.
Yeah, that was a valuable person in
As a
society.
valuable-
You
and
needed that person to
and
live.
He
Yeah,
fed a
it's like a
lot of
doctor.
people.
Your
People
family
depended
and-
on him.
yeah.
And so I think what happens in Europe is a lot of those, since they haven't built out and destroyed and put in Costco's, that they have continued to hold on to the fabric of those community things that helped everybody be healthy and a part of the same thing. There's bigger populations or whatever, but we still have that. We're not going to tear all this down to transfer to the new world,
Yeah.
which I think is
Because it's working.
because it's working. But what I'm saying is, and so those people are valued because they're a part of the community. They're a big part of the community. They're as important as anybody else. So I don't think if you were a trash man in Holland, it would be like being a trash man in South Chicago.
Yeah,
Right.
I believe
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, back to the education, like I got an interesting insight to it with my wife studying in Stanford. Her roommates were Italian and German, and they hung out with a lot of other international students. So it was very interesting to get their perspective on it. They're highly educated when they leave high school, like beyond what we get up into like junior college, or even probably into a lot of our four-year degree stuff. And they kind of taper it off a little bit into their university side, but then they do encourage them to study abroad as well. And it's easier for them, if you grow up in the UK, to go off and study in Paris for a while, or Germany and whatnot.
That's only like 10 hours away.
It's like going to school in New Mexico for them.
From California.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, it really is.
Yeah, it's would be a very cool experience, I think. Yeah.
So you guys mentioned you mentioned general health earlier and just a couple minutes ago. First, before we get into that, I wanted to ask how many of our common companies, corporations, stuff like that, did you see over there? Like, do you see McDonald's? You see Costco's? You mentioned. I mean,
McDonald's is everywhere.
McDonald's is everywhere. I know that's an easy one.
You know
but
who
what
else is everywhere? Kentucky Fried Chicken.
No, really?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Wow.
Colonel.
What about Starbucks? Are they all over the place? They're over the
Everywhere.
place
Wow.
too.
Everywhere.
What
Yeah.
else do you recall that was
So on my first trip, it wasn't nearly what it's like now.
really?
I went.
Well, how long was your first? how
So
long
when
ago
I was in Italy, that was like 2004 or 5.
okay, so
And
yeah.
then, so 13 years
Yeah.
later, I see a lot more fast food
Really?
and American companies.
That's
You know,
unfortunate.
like there's Burger King, there's McDonald's, there's
Yeah.
KFC.
Okay, so all those.
all of that stuff, and it's
do they have their
disappointing.
own?
They
That are
do,
as-
they do have some of their own.
and are
as
they
well,
as,
yeah.
as prolific like everywhere like they are here?
They're not. I don't think they're as big in the franchise
Okay.
world as
Yeah.
what we have
Okay.
here.
So they don't have some
Yeah.
different McDonald's everywhere, all the place over there.
Yeah. But I think it goes back to. I mean, there are stuff. I did see some things I saw in different countries or whatever. But I think it goes back to their community being smaller.
Oh, yeah.
You know, they're not
They
going to
can't
let these
feed
other
these
companies.
large-
Yeah, there's already that there.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, but they used to have, well, they still do, but their version of fast food that was a little healthier. So you, like in Italy, they had little pizza shops, and it was just like you'd get a square of pizza.
I would love a square pizza right now.
Yeah, and it would have like fresh zucchini on it.
Oh, nice.
And stuff like that. It wasn't like going and getting a Little Caesars or something here.
Yeah.
It was like legit food.
Got it.
Or a donor stand would be the
Yeah, you
equivalent.
hear that, everyone? Little Caesars is not legit food. All right, there's a reason that stuff smells like cardboard.
for $5.
Oh.
It is cardboard.
I'm sorry, Rick.
Or like a donor stand would be the equivalent of like a Euro spot, but
Donor.
a donor, I think it's a Turkish Euro.
Oh.
Like a Greek taco,
Oh,
have you?
interesting. Okay.
Right. So those were what their equivalent to a fast food shop would be, but they've been kind of pushed out and they're not as common as like the Starbucks and the McDonald's and stuff
Yeah.
now. So on my last trip, I did make a couple comments to Kate that I thought that was kind of sad that we're just taking over the world.
Yeah.
And I'd mentioned to Thomas as well, I noticed in some other places that it's increasing the obesity rate as well because
Yeah.
they're sucking down sodas and eating French fries and shit.
And that's what I wanted to lead into is how is the overall health look of the people? I mean, we see obesity here like crazy. I mean, how does it?
Going back to like walking and bicycling, everybody does that. I mean, I saw elderly people that I thought were 85 years old bicycling together, and they were just huffing down the street like a 20-year-old. I mean, it just seemed, and I'm sure there's tons of people there that are unhealthy or in hospitals just like here or whatever, but the general population, there was a lot more people out, and they were a lot more active. They seemed a lot healthier. They looked a lot healthier. I don't know. It just seemed like the bicycling and walking thing. I mean, I walked for 15
that makes complete
days.
sense, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, they're exercising just to get around.
Every day, yeah.
I mean, the first 2 to 4 days I was there, I was exhausted. I mean, I was like breathing heavy. I was like, I could hardly get upstairs. I was like, man, about 7 or 8 days into it, I was just like, I was walking. I was like, well, how far is it away on my Google map? Oh, it's 1.7 miles. All right, it'll take me 30 minutes.
Yeah.
That's how I was looking at things. I was walking a mile and a half to 2 miles from one location to the other.
And they're climbing like 4 flights of stairs to get to their apartment or
Yeah,
work.
with
you know,
groceries.
With groceries.
Yeah. Oh, another
Yeah.
thing too is I'll point out on the stairs thing. In most of Europe, the first floor isn't ground level like we have here.
Oh wow,
Yeah, so first floor is
because
up
it's an
one
old.
flight.
Oh, okay, so because the land is real old, right?
If
So
we're on the ground, that's 0.
okay.
If you're on the first floor, that's up there.
Oh, okay.
Also,
Interesting.
on the health thing, everyone smokes as well. So it is interesting to see all these healthy looking people, but everybody's smoking.
But they don't indulge either, though.
They're not as much chain
And are they
smokers.
smoking like very bad, company cigarettes, or are they smoking a healthier, like their own rolled tobacco or something along that nature?
Probably a mixture of both.
Both,
I saw
mixture,
a lot
okay.
of like Marlboros
Oh,
and
okay, so
Camels
they're-
and stuff, but they have
Yeah.
their own brands as well.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I have a friend who lives in Canada, and we were all on my back patio. It was like 4 of us, and I was the only one not smoking cigarettes. And we sparked a conversation about all their citizens there have health care, and she explained that it covers. It was a very interesting conversation. She said that it covers a lot of like regular procedures and surgeries
Checkups
and things
and
like
basic
that,
stuff.
right? And she also said that after a year of living there, she got the feel for the societal duty, I guess is what it would be, to take care of yourself. Because you can make these unhealthy choices and eat these crap foods or always be smoking a cigarette, but I'm going to have to pay for it. My taxes pay for you when you start to have health complications.
Yeah.
So there was that societal duty to take care of yourself. And then we also talked about cigarettes as well there too. And she made mention that, you know, you walk into any AM PM, and as you're paying, you're faced with a wall of bright colors and numbers and all kinds of different tobaccos and cigarettes, you know, tobacco products, whereas there's a white wall that covers all of it, and you have to request something.
I love that term there. You have a societal obligation
To take care of yourself,
So
yeah.
That's amazing, man. I wish people had that mentality here.
And that's something that I had never thought of previous to that
Yeah.
conversation.
To hear that is non-existent completely. I mean, everybody's don't tell me how to live my life. That's
Yeah.
everybody's attitude. Like, no.
Until they need your help.
Yeah, you are actually
Right.
bringing us down by not taking care of yourself. Thank you. Okay, very cool. I like that a lot. Let's get into art, history, architecture, things of that nature. Right off the bat, you guys were talking about museums. How is that different than here? What was remarkable to you about museums out there?
To me, there were several things. I went to as many museums as I possibly could everywhere I went.
Cool.
I think I went to
That I would totally be down to see.
I think I went to 8 or 10 different museum type places in Amsterdam. A couple of the really, really big ones that were like super fancy and super big, they were expensive.
Okay.
And by that I mean like 16 euro.
What is that, like 20, 23 bucks?
Maybe
20 bucks,
little
maybe.
18
20
bucks.
That's fine.
18
That's
bucks, something
normal
like
here.
that. No, it's not.
No.
I've traveled all over the United States, and every time I want to go to a museum or even something small in the United States, it's like $36.
Actually, that's true. When I've gone in San Francisco and checked out the museums out there, yeah, sometimes they can get
It's
like
ridiculous.
50 bucks.
Yeah,
to get
45,
the place.
50 bucks.
Yeah.
And those were,
That's true.
and so those two museums I went to that were 16 euro or whatever it was, those were the most expensive ones by double.
Oh,
because
okay.
the average museum that I went to, even if it was a pretty significant sized place, they were all about €8 to get into.
Wow.
Which made me go to a lot more of them, and
Okay, yeah.
they were all full. Every place I went to, there were people checking it out.
That's good. That's cool.
Yeah, and they'll also have special exhibits around where famous artists lived or grew up. You know, it's like you can go to the Picasso Museum,
Rembrandt house.
Rembrandt, right there in Amsterdam, Salvador Dali,
Wow, that'd be
Gaudi. Yeah, that's where these people lived. You
Yeah.
know, where they grew up. So they have a heavy influence, not just in the museums, but also in the local architecture as well.
Yeah, so
depending on the artist.
I imagine since that history's there, it's way more embedded in their culture than as opposed to us just like being shown, you know, pictures and books when
Yeah.
we're in elementary school. Not really, it doesn't really mean anything.
You don't have a connection to it. Where
No.
where they're like, you know, I know that's a good point. If you look at it, like, you know, people in most of Europe are living with buildings that are like, you know, 400 or 500 years old. It's nothing for the average building you're standing in most of these countries to be 200 to 500 years old.
And that's a trip to think about here in America. We're so young.
We tear down
especially on the-
everything.
Yeah,
because that's how
especially
we
on the
make
West
money.
Coast.
We
I
tear
mean,
down things
yeah.
and replace it with something
Like
else.
nothing
With
endures
KFC.
here. Nothing's
Yeah.
really that old. Yeah.
And McDonald's.
Yeah. And that's one thing that I talk about when I'm speaking with other travelers. Like all of our oldest stuff is typically newer than their newest stuff in Europe.
Right.
In the West Coast here, we have some missions scattered about.
Yeah.
You know, that's about as old as it's going to
And
get.
those only really go into like the 1800s.
Yeah.
Right. Maybe some a little bit earlier with the
Yeah,
Spanish
late
coming up.
1700s.
Yeah. But
That's it.
yeah, you go back east, there's a lot of stuff from the 1700s and whatnot. But yeah, back there, it's like it's not uncommon to be in a building a castle that was built in 400 BC or whatever.
Yeah.
You know, and that also changes hands too through time. When we were in Malaga, there's a giant palace called Alhambra, and it was a Moorish castle, right? So in the 5th century, when the rest of Europe was in the Dark Ages, that was like the hub for science and technology, and also religious tolerance. So the Muslims and the Christians and the Jews lived together there, but they were under kind of Muslim control. Crusades happened, Christians kind of pushed them out, they took it back, and it did a little back and forth thing there, and then that spread up to the rest of Europe. But my point is, it's like, it's interesting to be standing somewhere and thinking about all of the conquerors that have come through here and been where you were standing with 500 other tourists.
Yeah,
Yeah, and that's something that was really cool. And I wanted to go to Rome, and I wanted to go to Cologne, and I just didn't really have the time and extra cash. But that I think was one of those things that's like really kind of like made me feel, I don't know, it balanced a lot of things out for me to stand in front of buildings or walk around places that were like 400 and 500 years old.
Yeah.
And so many places you go to were, and that's why I was going back about the retrofitting of buildings, how they're used and stuff like that. I think that's one thing that a lot of people give Europe a bad name, or they complain about, especially Americans go there and complain about things like that. I'm like, you're looking at this, this is a building, this is a city, a town that's been here for 500 years. That's older than this entire country, and that was the 28th generation of its existence. So you're stepping back in time, and I think there's a bigger appreciation for everything around you when almost every building you're in is of historical significance, and I think of the cultural aspects of growing up around that and appreciating those things. I don't know, it's definitely something we lack in America, and I think it is heavily ingrained into how most of Europeans feel about just being more community and more together. I mean, walking around these buildings, like that's Rembrandt's house.
Yeah, that would be crazy.
It's cool to see a painting at a museum, but that's the house he lived in when he was painting those.
Yeah.
That's a whole different aspect in general.
I think it helps with national pride as well, where they feel more connected to their
you
country.
Can see those things. Like here, we don't see any of the East Coast stuff unless you travel over there. We don't see it all the time. We're not around it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Not nearly as embedded in our real world experience.
Yeah, and so one thing I learned and was talking about architecture and things like that, in Zwolle, which was where my buddy was staying in Netherlands, they have a lot. The village is really, really old. So the village, it started out as a village that was a castle built around a small village, and then they built a moat. So when you looked at it from a map, it was almost like a 15-point star. And it had all these weird spots on it, and then the canal came in one side and came out the other, so they could come in and out, and they had the moat around this little city because they had to have a moat around a small city to protect themselves.
Yeah.
That was, I think the date I saw on it was like 12-something.
Whoa.
I seriously,
That's crazy.
1202 or 12, whatever, it was 1200 something. And so that building had stood since the 1200s until World War II when the Germans attacked. And they blew out a bunch of the walls and stuff. And so whatever they had left inside there was what was left over from it being bombed. So you're standing next to this thing, and I've got a couple pictures of this wall that's 6 feet thick of actual, the little red blocks, cement, the bricks. I mean, they hand laid this stuff down, and these walls are 6 foot thick and 25 feet tall. And it was probably 5 miles, linear miles of this built. And so there's these sections blown out, and you're standing there and it's like, for me, I'm a history buff in general, but to stand there and go, okay, the reason that wall's blown up is because a German explosive from somewhere over there blew that up. I'm standing if I were standing where I am right now, 50 years ago, I would have been either being shot at by a German soldier or, so the connection to what really went on, and that was something else that I was, when I was trying to talk about the connection of the community thing, I had a conversation with a friend of mine, and I'm not going to throw a big topic, it was a little bit about guns in Europe, and after World War II, a lot of countries in Europe banned guns, like right after World War II. They had went through this horrific experience, and Americans will never understand that because we've never had a war on our own soil, and we don't all live in New York City. And I think that's what it was for like a lot of Europeans that went through World War II. Everything came crashing down, and everybody was right there together. Yeah. And we're so separatist, we'll never experience that, I don't think. But the feeling was that like a lot of people had that's where the banding together came, and it just seemed like there was this weird community of the pride of everything. So everything that was left, they wanted to preserve it because that's all they had. So that's why a lot of these old buildings and structures mean so much, I think, to the people, is because they were like, look, we lost everything. This is the remains of what after my grandparents, everything that they knew was destroyed. We don't have that here, and it changes the culture. It changes your mentality a lot.
Definitely. That's some heavy crap to carry carry through the generations for sure. Right. So moving on through this, let's talk about, because you guys had mentioned to me beforehand before recording a number of public services that were made available to people and just kind of made general life very much different, if not completely better. And the first one I want to talk about, which we have already touched on a little bit, was transportation in general. So obviously, you guys had already said that their public transportation and their trains and their buses are a whole lot more efficient.
Bullet trains.
Bullet train, yeah. They have real bullet trains, right? And
the fastest train I was on, I was driving this train.
Nice.
Anyway, I was on a train going from Berlin to Hanover, which is another city in Germany, and it was an intercity train, and it's all in kilometers. And they, it's like on a, they have a screen that tells you about your trip and how far to the next distance and whatever, and it shows the kilometers and what we're doing. And we were doing 250 kilometers.
Wow,
an hour on the train.
Nice.
That's roughly almost about 160 miles an hour.
Yeah, it's about where your speedometer tops out here for most cars in the U.S. Unless you got a really cool car. Awesome. And anything to add to that, Rick?
Yeah, well, public transportation is one of the ones that, as a traveler, you're going to recognize or be able to see as helpful. But also, they have people that come through and clean the city every night or all day during the day, depending on how much traffic comes through there. So they stay a lot cleaner than like here in Sacramento, where trash piles up and eventually somebody gets to it. They have like little guys cruising around on street sweepers every night, picking up beer bottles, emptying the waste barrels and stuff like that. So that helps with the street level cleanliness. I think is super beneficial. And then there's a bunch of documentaries out there about the social benefits that European countries provide for their citizens that come with the extra taxes and whatnot, and partly like the education that we were talking about earlier. I can't speak on a lot of that other stuff though, because I don't know a whole lot about it. But definitely transportation super efficient, and it also kind of makes sense too, because a lot of those roads were built before cars were invented, and they had the trains and the metros already figured out.
Yeah.
While we were still spreading out to the West Coast out here.
Yeah.
And then also our industrialization, prevented a lot of the public transportation. It's hard for Henry Ford to sell, Model Ts if everybody's hopping on the bus or the light rail or the trolley.
Well, Goodyear in the early 1900s forced their way into getting a lot of the trolley cars removed from Los Angeles so they could sell more tires.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah,
That's
so did the
American.
auto industry too.
Yeah.
The auto industry has held back public transportation throughout the country so they could sell more cars.
Yeah.
But the thing in Europe is the trains were already there a lot longer. The paths that were, like we talked about the trail going to the out west when people were traveling through America. That was 300 years ago. Mm-hmm. They already had roads established with blocks built in 900 years ago. You go to a city like Cologne or something, and you're walking on streets that are like 2,000 years old.
Yeah.
Paved by the Romans.
Yeah, right. Yeah. And so it's just, and I think when you're there and you're walking around and you're looking at this and the history of this, you're just like, it's overwhelming if you care.
Yeah.
And I care, and it was overwhelming.
So, okay, there's a couple of things I wanted to touch on that, what you had just said there. You threw a lot out there all at once. Okay, so the road conditions are better there on for their highways.
And stuff, man. You don't have so.
Like I know the Autobahn is going to be like super
dude.
pristine. I know. So leaving that one out. Other highways and roads.
I drove on several highways in Holland because I was with a buddy who was driving from back a regular highway, what we would consider regular interstate, like the 5 here in California, whatever. No potholes, it was like if you took a pencil and drew a drawing of a highway. That's what it felt like you were looking at. It was so.
The striping and the
everything was like really, really like mathematically perfect.
Wow.
Well maintained.
Really very well maintained.
Nice.
Yeah. And another thing too, there's not a lot of distraction, especially on the highways. They don't have billboards and advertisements everywhere.
You're like out in the country, so you feel like when you're on the highway, Amsterdam could have been 5 miles back, and you feel like you're 2,000 miles from anything,
Yeah,
That's
I don't
how it
know.
felt.
Everybody listening out there, I don't know how roads are for you guys and your freeways, but man, they are putting up those huge color LED displays everywhere now. I mean, we're being inundated, and this is just Sacramento. I mean, we're not talking Bay Area, we're not talking LA, we're Southern
I hate those
California.
things.
It's just taken over. It's going crazy out here with the advertising because they're making so much money off of those advertisements. I also wanted to go back a few steps here where we were talking about the cleanliness of the city. I just wanted to throw a random comment out there. It blew me away when I started working in downtown Sac, and I imagine it's the same. Well, I mean, it could be the same in other cities. I don't never really lived and hung around in other cities, but when I used to come in around, I don't know, 8, 9 in the morning, something like that. And sometimes you'd see those pressure washer trucks out there pressure washing, some area of the city. You don't really pay too much attention to it. You just think, oh, they're just cleaning the city, right? Then I started, a few years went by, I started coming in a little earlier, and I started noticing that those trucks will come out even earlier. And I would notice that there would be usually some vagrant laying there or sleeping there or whatever. And over the years, time passed, I had talked to people who work the public utilities and stuff, and I learned that those trucks that come out and clean our sidewalks and stuff usually only come out when a bum bleeds out, otherwise bodily excrements all over the place, or dies, or some other unpleasant thing that happens there. And I was like, man, so they're not even doing it just to keep this place clean. They got to spray off those park benches and those bus stops or whatever because there's some nasty stuff on there, right? And then what blows me away is now knowing that, you walk around the city and you're looking around and there'll be some museum that you'll pass and there'll be a whole, multiple bus loads of kids lined up outside. And you're like, oh, man, you just want to walk up to those kids and the mothers that are working, keeping them, the parent PTA people or whatever, watching these kids. No, don't let them touch anything. I swear, I just saw a bum take a crap right off the edge of that ledge that little kid is climbing on right now. And it's like, it is straight up nasty, folks. So the fact that you mentioned that they're cleaning, there's teams of people who are cleaning these streets on a regular basis blows me the hell away because, barely they pick up the trash. Usually the leaf blowers the next day, it blow the trash out of the roadways and whatever. And that's just because they're blowing the leaves out of the way.
Right.
Just kind of goes with it. So that would be amazing to have city cleaners like that.
Well, when I was in Zwula, when we were on the third floor apartment there, in the mornings, bars would close at 6. By 6:15, the morning traffic is moving, and every single morning there would be a truck go by with a power washer and they would spray around where all the trash cans and stuff were. So, that was another thing I wanted to bring up too. A lot of the apartment areas, you don't necessarily have your own giant trash can in the building. The whole building maybe has 2 dumpsters, and the dumpsters
really?
are glass, plastic, and waste.
Okay,
and you have to have a card, and you have to pay every time you throw something away.
What? That is
so
crazy.
So like an apartment, they might pay $30 a month, but you only get X amount of times that you can put trash in these things.
So you have to swipe the card to unlock the trash can, the dumpster.
Well, if the ones are for like an apartment building or something.
Wow, I've never heard of that concept before.
Yeah,
that's wild.
It keeps people from developing.
Yeah, well, you're
going
to think because it makes people think. Like, wait a minute, I only have X number of times to use the dumpster that I've paid for. I better minimize the amount of trash that I'm throwing away, or stockpile it in your apartment until you use your one.
Or figure something out.
Yeah, either way, you have to think. You have to be more conscious about your waste.
Absolutely,
I love that idea. That's crazy. Yeah.
Tell them about the garbage man.
Well, okay, so in Zula, and I think a lot of the Netherlands, because I was asking people, and they're like, "Oh yeah, that's common. What are you, stupid?" And I was like, "No, I'm an American." But there was those apartment ones I was talking about. When you're standing next to them, it's a square that's maybe 3 foot by 3 foot by 4 foot tall, and they've got it looks like a barbecue grill almost, where you flip it down or something, and you put your trash in, whatever. Mm-hmm. So that thing, I said maybe 4 foot by 4 foot by 4 foot square, whatever. So that's on this giant plate of steel, and there's a hook on it. So every Monday, they use cranes for everything. These cranes that fold down into a pickup truck size. They're unbelievable, these cranes. But anyway, that's what they use all over the Netherlands for everything. They crane everything. And so they come to pick it up on Monday. They grab it, they pick it up, and below the ground is basically about a 16-foot tall by 6 foot by 6 foot square dumpster that lives underground, that's completely sealed. Wow. And they'll pull that out with a crane. Whoa. And that thing's 40 feet in the air. They'll swing it over the truck. They'll set it on top of the truck, and this bottom thing opens when they're connected, and it dumps everything, and then it compacts inside that truck. They pick that thing back over and drop it down, and you watch this literally 16-foot tall steel drum just go right into the concrete, and there's just this little thing sticking out.
Massive. That's
cool.
cool.
Awesome.
Wow, that's cool.
Yeah,
I never heard of that concept.
Very efficient use of space.
Yeah, just deep instead of wide or big or whatever.
And back to the bathrooms on the street, and a lot of the big cities, they'll have public restrooms that are like a tomb or something, and some of them you pay to go in, and when you're done, it'll self-clean.
What?
Yeah, and then when I was in Amsterdam, and I think I saw them also in Kaiserslautern, they had, it was kind of like a porta potty, but it was like a 5-star urinal. So you're essentially urinating
yeah.
in public,
Yep.
right? Because you're not
heard
closed
of
in, but you just walk up to this star and
It looks like a wedge. Like it's like you're walking up to jam a wedge into your crotch.
Yeah.
And you're peeing, and the walls are like, just barely at your shoulder, so you can like really kind of see every. And it's like a circle. They had at the Lowlands Music Festival I went to. They had a bunch of portalet versions of that, but I saw those in Amsterdam, and then Amsterdam had another thing too, where it was like if you took two curves. And instead of having a circle, break it in half and then move them over and kind of sit them like that. So you almost did like a little curve walking in, and it was just like a trowel thing where you just pee into.
Wow.
Nice.
And some of those didn't. They would just have a wall, and you're just peeing onto the ground.
Yeah, so for the girls out there, in case you were wondering, this is how guys pee in Amsterdam.
Yeah, which means girls don't get to pee ever.
Yeah.
Well, they had the pay ones, the pay
they
restrooms
do that
as
pay
well.
ones, yeah. And it seemed like the pay ones. At first I was like, pay, but a lot of times the pay ones were actually pretty clean.
Much cleaner than if you were to go to the
Maintain.
coffee shop,
Yeah.
and use their restroom.
Yeah, so if you're paying to go to a bathroom there, you're probably going to a clean one.
Yeah.
So like if if you're like, I really need to blow my nose, or I really need to like actually use the bathroom, or
In a clean space.
For €1, it's worth every penny.
Got it. Okay, so continuing on with public services, real quick, did you guys pick up tell me some information on healthcare that you guys picked up? 'Cause you started off a little bit talking about it, and care to add anything else to that? I'm curious what you guys learned about how that works out there for them.
Yeah, I don't know a whole lot about that, but from Kate's roommates in school, their families were wealthier, so they paid for their own insurance on top of what you would get from your general services.
Okay.
Yeah, and the little bit of a conversation I had, which was extremely small, was explained to me as far as the Dutch and Netherlands, that the basic healthcare that everybody gets is sort of like what we call in America Obamacare. Okay. So it's something that's there. It seems like it's a little better because they were talking about like clinics and preventative maintenance and stuff preventative maintenance on your car, on your
that's
colon,
technically what it
whatever.
is, right?
Yeah, but I mean,
Get your oil checked.
yeah, get your filter changed.
Nice.
But it seemed like that was more important, even in their lower, level care, or like the basic care, I guess you would call it. So it seemed like after having a conversation, I was like, well, you get a lot. I mean, I'm on Obamacare.
Yeah.
California would call it.
Cover California, right?
No, well, it's Medi-Cal.
Oh, Medi-Cal, okay.
Medi-Cal, and it's terrible. It's the most horrible, horrific
That's what
thing
I
I've
heard.
ever experienced. But there, it's the same thing. Like Rick was saying, is like people who have money, they can afford to buy the next levels up, and because the insurance there is a lot more controlled, that those next tiers up, it seemed like what I was being told was they weren't that expensive. Like here, my brother,
massive jumps.
Oh man, it's crazy. My brother was trying to get insurance a while back for him, his wife, and his son, his teenage son, and it was like $900 to $1,100 a month.
Yeah, if you have no match, if nobody's matching your contribution,
That's
it's
more than
crazy.
most people pay for a mortgage.
Yeah.
Just for health
Not in
insurance.
California, but yeah.
Yeah, so think about what the percentage of your income is, and there because it's cheaper on those scales. If you do make a decent amount of money, or you're a butcher and you have an actual job of some sort,
tradesman can
tradesman
survive.
thing or whatever, you can afford to buy up a couple tiers and have pretty good health care.
Yeah.
In general, so I'd say they have more options in that regard than we do.
Gotcha. And real quick, you had mentioned before we were recording something about their cell phone situation over there.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Because I consider that a public service in a sense, even though it's probably privately owned, but nevertheless, there's a regulatory.
Right. So this is one thing I want to bring up, because a lot of people that I talk to in America have this like horrible thing about taxes, and taxes are bad everywhere, but you've never had a choice. People have been taxing rich people have been taxing
Death
poor
and
people.
taxes, right? Death and
Oh, yeah.
taxes.
So you got to get over it, and if you're going to be a part of it, I think you should try to get as much out of it as you can. And so one of the things that happens with in a community like that, or environment, or government, or whatever that has more control in the tax thing, that because they're so proud of their community, they give more back and do little things to help people out. One of the things that I thought was really cool was they don't allow a lot of big companies to come in and monopolize service or something, or charge you 5 times what you feel like you should pay for it. There's more regulation to what, like cell phones. So basically what I was told in Holland, you pay $30 a month for unlimited everything. So if you buy an iPhone 10 and you go to Verizon to turn it on, and this is kind of my situation, I pay a minimum of $100 a month.
Yep.
If you're going to have a cell phone that's going to be anything decent, you're going to have decent coverage, $100 a month. I'm hoping other options come out. That's pretty much it. And they can charge you lots more for all kinds of dumb stuff, you know, and we've all dealt with it. But there, it's like, no, you can't play games. You're going to offer this service. This is the max you can charge for it, and you're going to give them everything that they can get.
See, and that's one of the greatest benefits to a certain level of government regulation.
It is.
If you have this type of government regulation that can tell these large corporations, no, you're not going to screw these people and just,
Can you
swallow
imagine
up all this
Can you imagine
money.
if they did that to Big Farm?
And yeah. That's a whole other topic, but yes.
A different podcast.
Yeah, exactly. And then that one's coming because that one, the pharmaceutical company. Yeah, anyway. Gotcha. That was very cool. Let's
Also, for people traveling, if you don't get onto a plan like that in time and you're worried about communicating with people while you're traveling around, a lot of the folks in South America or in Europe, they'll use things like WhatsApp or other media
data
tools.
connected ones, so you can use it for Wi-Fi, right? You don't need the cellular network,
And they've got Wi-Fi everywhere, so if you just duck into a cafe or something like that or stand close enough, you can use their Wi-Fi and still communicate with each other and not get raped by AT&T to talk on the phone or whatnot.
Yeah, and I've also heard of friends that travel and go to, and I looked into this a little bit, but I kind of I had other things to deal with. But he would, like when he goes to Asia, and especially Japan, he would go into a phone store or something and buy like a hotspot.
Oh yeah.
And so, and
paper data or whatever hotspot.
Data thing, and so he just throw it in his backpack, and he would just be on Wi-Fi all the time, so he wasn't paying for the service. I have Verizon, and I had to pay $10 a day for X amount of data on an international plan, but I had service, and it actually worked really well.
Okay.
But
That's cool.
$10 a day adds up quick.
Hell yeah.
And
Big time.
and they don't give you a lot. You get way less than you do on your normal plan. And once you've used half of it, they start throttling it down. So you notice.
So they basically screw you on it.
They basically screw you on it. So I was just like, oh man. Yeah.
All right. Not really a public service, but definitely something that's available to the public, and I'm sure a lot of the people are curious about it too. You're in Amsterdam. Tell us about the weed cafes.
So being a resident of California,
there you go. So
an active I don't know,
enthusiast
of the culture. I'm pretty. I don't know. I was didn't know what to expect. I'd heard lots of stories, and I remember back in the day before legalization here and stuff. So here's the 2-minute drill I'll give you on weed in Holland. The entire country has the same rules that Amsterdam has. It's a country. It's not the city's not a country. It's a country of Holland, and Amsterdam is one of the cities. So the country as a whole has the exact same weed policies, and it's legal. And you can go to a coffee shop. They call them coffee shops everywhere in the country. You can be in any city in Holland, not just Amsterdam, and go buy weed. A lot of places have smoking rooms. What's starting to happen now is a lot of the places that had smoking rooms, which I think made a lot of Amsterdam popular because people would go there, they buy some weed, and they go down to this little dingy room back there and smoke with a bunch of other people. And it was like being in a smoking room in a building back when people smoked cigarettes. It was just full of smoke and so I think what's going on now, and a lot of cities, in Azula was one that I was there while the law went into effect, they're outlawing smoking in the building as a smoking room.
Okay.
It's not
fine.
healthy to be smoking there. But you can smoke out on the sidewalk. So they all have, like cafes, all have outside seating where you go out there, you can sit in the bar, roll a joint, you can buy weed from them, buy papers, whatever, and you roll it inside or go outside, go sit on the deck. And
like we have hookah bars too, like
same
the
kind of
lounges,
thing.
it's all outdoors
same kind of
usually.
And some of them are bars that will sell alcohol. I went to a couple of those. Almost none of them sell any real food. Any kind
just
of
edibles.
Just edibles, yeah, space cakes. But a lot of them did have alcohol. But it was weird to me because like you're in Amsterdam, and in one of the cafes I was in, I was rolling a joint and at the bar, which I just did it because I was like, I'm hanging out in a public bar.
Because I can just in Amsterdam.
Yeah, because it's just like rolling a cigarette. I've seen people at bars here break out their stuff, which I think is odd, but whatever.
It does look weird because
every
weird. Time I see it, I'm like, dude, are you rolling a joint? Like, what are you really putting in that? I can't see. It's dark.
But there is one of those things where there's no stigma to it, so people don't really care. So if you're at the bar and you're having a drink, you're like, what are you doing? I'm rolling a spliff, which is what a lot of people in Europe do. They roll spliffs, tobacco with a little bit of weed. They spread it out.
Tobacco,
yeah, everybody smokes tobacco. But you can sit there and do it. And I was like, this is awesome. I can just sit here, have a beer, roll a joint, and then go sit out on the deck and smoke it.
Partake in the
talk
devil's
to a
league.
cop
I was
while
like-
you're doing it.
I was like, this is
Talk
the
to a
mo-
couple.
Yeah.
Nice.
They'll just bullshit with you.
yeah, just this is the most relaxing. I would go out and be more social if I could just go have a drink, roll a joint, and sit out on the deck and smoke a joint with people.
We
I mean,
basically can now, but
Well,
I know what you
yeah.
mean, and it's,
But,
it's still
yeah.
not ingrained in our society. It's still
Yeah.
way too new.
but it was just crazy. But it's not, but I think a lot of people think it's just Amsterdam, and I think that we need to
Yeah.
clarify that Amsterdam is a city, not a country. The country is Holland. It's a city, so the entire country has the same laws. So you can go anywhere in Holland. So you could go to The Hague, which is their capital, or you could go to Rotterdam, which is another really cool city, and it's the same thing. It's just Amsterdam has more of the touristy kind of feel.
Okay, since that kind of leads into what about other drugs did you see available, publicly like that? I mean, not the dude in the trench coat around the back alley or whatever,
Yeah.
but I mean, as in publicly available that a lot of people partake in. Maybe not everybody, but
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I didn't really see much. I was offered some other drugs.
yeah, that kind of stuff will happen to
Yeah,
you
anywhere that
but
you
yeah.
go, especially if they realize you're a tourist.
Oh
like,
yeah. You
but,
go to Vegas and you get all kinds of crazy crap.
Yeah, but I didn't really see a lot of that, and I'm sure
Okay.
there's a drug culture. There's drug cultures everywhere, but I didn't see a lot.
I was
of
just
it.
curious what is available in little like retail outlets and that kind of stuff. I mean,
Oh, you mean as far as like buying legally?
yeah,
Just
that's-
weed.
Okay, just weed.
Magic mushrooms too, right?
Well, yeah, okay.
Psilocybin.
So I'm totally wrong. So yeah, there are some other drugs like that. I didn't go into any of the cafes that sold a lot of other stuff.
Okay.
But yeah, you're right, Joe. There are. You can. There's a list of things that you can buy legally. Mushrooms was one of them. I just didn't partake in any of those things because I didn't.
Yeah, I was
experience
just
it.
curious what's available. I'm not asking what you
Yeah.
what the hell you were out there tripping on.
No, but yeah, I totally until Joe said that, I totally forgot about the mushroom thing. But there's like 3 or 4 others too.
I think you might be able to get opium in some of the bars. I'm
You-
not 100%
oh, yeah.
sure on that
Whoa.
though.
Yeah,
That's crazy.
yeah.
Yeah.
So they're a lot more open to like a lot of things we consider Schedule 1. They're just like, are you kidding me?
Yeah.
Like this has been around forever. And as it goes back into the realization of you as a person on the earth, they're like, well, are you kidding me? It's just weed, I mean,
Yeah.
there's no stigmatism. What's weird is like when you were standing outside the cafes or something and you're smoking, there's a lot of tourism there. So there's tiny little streets. You're all crammed into these little things. And I was sitting next, standing outside the door because they're like, oh, smoke outside. I'm like, I can smoke this joint outside? They're like, absolutely. Okay, so I'm going to do that. So I sit out there. I'm smoking this joint. There's tourists walking by. There's couples with their kids walking by, and I'm smoking a joint. And I'm just like, I almost feel bad because I'm smoking a joint in front of these kids.
See,
But I'm like, this is the greatest thing about it. It's not a big deal. It's just, so the stigmatism, if you're like, what I mean? It's removed. A lot of the stigmatisms that we have here are removed by the culture just doing them.
Yeah. Yeah, but here it's okay to get ridiculously plastered and destroy your life off alcohol. And okay, it's funny he's an alcoholic.
Yeah.
Also, sexual stigmatisms are much more removed in Europe as well. Like they have nudity in commercials and stuff like that.
I've heard that.
Lots of legal prostitution.
That's
yeah.
where we're going to get into that next year. I wanted
Yeah.
to ask you guys about that.
But they trade off the sex for violence. Like they don't have violence in their television, not a whole lot in their movies and stuff like that.
I've heard
whereas
that too, yeah.
we've got it everywhere.
Yeah. It's like you can't show boobies, but you can cut people apart and
Yeah.
take their guts out and stuff. That's okay.
Right.
That's cool, right? Let's talk about the red light district because I know a lot of people are going to be curious about that too. Like, what did you guys? Not that you partook or anything, but I mean, how out there is it since sex is more accepted and open in their society? I mean, is it like you're walking down the street and you're like, oh, look, there's a brothel right over there? It's like, I mean, how here we got to go to Nevada, right? If you're going to go do that stuff and it's way off in the distance or something like real far away removed.
Out by the chicken farm.
Yeah. Or if you're in Vegas, I mean, you get the clickers, right, with their little cards trying to get you to call the prostitutes or whatever. So, but it's real subtle, right? So I was wondering how is it out there?
So yeah, the red light district was a series of alleys that had just girls standing in windows or in their doorways, coaxing you in, or
Kind of like
talk
the porn
to you.
shops in San Francisco.
Yeah, but it didn't seem like that dirty.
As
I don't
dirty.
know. Yeah, I mean it was really crowded. I went down one of the small ones. I don't remember the significance of the alley, but it was like you're just shoulder to shoulder with people and just like trying to fight your way through this alley.
Damn.
Yeah, it was like
They're just standing in the alley, or are they trying to get into the things?
No,
or?
they're in the buildings.
Oh,
Their doors are in the alley, right?
Oh.
So you're walking through
Like
the
a
alley,
display
looking,
window.
okay.
Yeah, you're
But it's
looking
a
at
door
the
and a window.
shop windows. Yeah, and
So you can literally go window shopping, huh?
you are like
You
some
are.
of them are hanging out, in their window, and you walk up.
And they go like
and-
this a lot
Oh, to get your
on
attention.
and the glass. Sometimes they'll just stand there with like a lighter.
Really weird.
It was pretty interesting, but I think a lot of the brothels are much more subtle, where it'll be like a floor or several floors in a building, but not marked,
Wow.
so the locals would know where they are. But the red light district's a very touristy thing.
Because a buddy of mine was telling me, we were talking about that randomly when I was in Zula, and he said that in Germany, a lot of them are in like basically like buildings, or it might be a hotel, or what we would think of as a hotel, but it's just a building, and you might go into the first floor and say, oh, I'm here for this, and they go, oh, okay, go up to the next floor or whatever, and you can go up to different floors. And what he was telling me in Germany is some of them, you go up to the first floor, and that's like basic stuff, like basic, for lack of a better term, blowjobs,
Go there,
sex,
get a hand
regular-
job on these floors,
Yeah.
and go to this floor for
Yeah.
something fancier.
So the top floor might be like total S&M kind of thing. So there's like different
themed
level, like-
floors.
so
Wow.
yeah, not really themed, but I guess it'd be more like that's more kinky than getting a hand job. You know what I'm
Interesting.
saying?
Are you a third floor freak or a fifth floor freak?
What floor do you
Did you
float
see that
on?
building? I hit the 5th floor in that one.
I've been on every floor of that building.
Haven't been the same since.
But in the red light district, it's like it really is alleyways, and they have them on the bigger, more populated streets too. Because think of the red light district. Just think of north and south streets and east and west streets. So the east and west streets generally are canal, bridges, and alleys, and the north and south are more like main streets. Main streets, but I mean like small, like from that wall to where Joe's standing is one side of the canal. You know what I mean? So they're like maybe 8-10 feet wide in a lot of areas.
Wow.
That's the main streets. So yeah, the alleyways that connect a lot of those, that's where a lot of the red light things is. And it's weird because everybody cuts through the alley because they're just trying to get from this street to this street. So there's tons of people in the alleyways, and they're super, super tiny. And all of a sudden there's like red lights everywhere, and you look over and you're like, okay. You just like, it's just like, it kind of like the first time I was walking through the alley, I wasn't really paying attention. I'm just like walking around, and all of a sudden I look over and I'm like, wait, there's like 4 girls here in this weird room. And, and this kid, again, there's, parents walking their kids, taking cruises through Amsterdam, and there's a prostitute. And so again, it's like, it's a prostitute. Like it's like the stigma is removed from most the Europeans at such an early age. This is everywhere. This is just part of the world.
Yeah. The oldest trade in the world, right? Okay, I'm going to shift our gears here real quick, and we're kind of coming to the end here because we're way over. But playing, like I mentioned in the beginning, I want to play some devil's advocate here and kind of look at this at a different angle. This international travel you guys have done, wherever you've gone, Rick, I know multiple places, but in whatever you've done, Thomas, how do you guys feel that this has actually changed or bettered your life? Now you know what you know. Now you've seen what you've seen. Do you feel that this has helped you at all? I mean, as a kind of like looking at the big picture, because you came home, and this is one of the things that's always kind of been in the back of my mind, being that I haven't traveled, is you come back here, being exposed to all these new and interesting and different ideas, and you're still back here. Your life's waiting for you, right when you come back. It's like all back to normal. And how do you feel?
I think it was a very positive experience, and there is a lot about European culture that I would like to live in and raise children in. But home is still home, and that's a very difficult thing to kind of like leave for permanently. After my first trip, it had become like a goal to go back, and then the more I had gone back, the more I wanted to make it a goal to move internationally and live for at least a few years. I'm kind of old for that now. It's still kind of on the books, but it's definitely an experience that I would not have traded for anything. I've listened to some of your guys' other shows about burner events or psychedelic experiences. I would put it up there with something like that. It opens your eyes to an entirely different world that you knew tangibly existed, but you don't understand what it comes with. Simple things like taking your time to eat and enjoy your day, or appreciating that a clean bathroom you're not going to find anywhere, or just a mellower lifestyle. And that one of the things that I really liked about the European culture is that they definitely have an emphasis on family and enjoying their time, and not so much on working and trying to get like an edge on their career over someone else.
Yeah, and they're not materialistic either.
No.
And so I think for me it was like, coming back here, obviously I've only been here 12 hours.
Yeah,
so
yeah,
I know,
yeah.
but I mean, just think, and just thinking about the experiences and stuff. I mean, yeah, the Dutch are so freaking laid back. It definitely reminded me of what I felt like a definite connection with a lot of the California mentality, but theirs is a more planned out, calculated, a very like they're in control of things, and they're still super mellow. They don't get stressed out. I don't know, and it made me think about things a lot differently. And plus, too, going and seeing another country or super old buildings that were 1,000 years old and stuff like that. It's just to me, I think this one thing about life for me is I like looking and seeing. I've moved to lots of cities. When I would move to a city, I would like drive. I'd get a job somewhere, and I'd drive to work my second day, and I'm like, oh man, this and that. And then people that live there were like, where's that? I've never seen that. I'm like, because you fall asleep when you stay in one place long enough, And I think people don't see anything because they're just in this routine and they got blinders on. So to remove those blinders and throw yourself in and immerse yourself in another culture or another place where everything is different, I think it really teaches you a lot, and it also makes you appreciate a lot, regardless of where it's the paper towels usage or whatever, little things. But it's just to me, I feel a lot more connected with what the world's really about than I was before, or at least the areas that I was in. I mean, I don't know, seeing like the culture, the way people move, the way people eat, the way they took care of each other, the way they took care of the buildings, their community, I mean, just seeing the whole thing, and then seeing how we work. Like, I mean, I think that everybody could learn from everybody, and anybody who doesn't travel or hasn't traveled, I hear a lot of people say, I don't need to do it. I'm like, I can't. Yeah, I think the reference about the burner event was a prime example that it is one of those sort of life-changing experiences where you're like, wow, nothing I knew before is the same anymore.
Like, I heard about it, but I didn't think it was going to be like this.
Yeah.
So I think about like 10 years ago, I heard this quote that I just really appreciated and will probably stick with me for the rest of my days. I think it's by St. Augustine, and the quote is, "The world is a book, and those who do not travel read only one page." And that always resonated for me for, getting like a bigger picture view of humanity and how human beings relate to one another. And there's a lot of things that inherently go against the grain with me in regards to American culture and what we place value on. And it's always, been an appeal for travel. So I definitely look forward to doing that.
And see, playing off of that, that's always been one of the things I was most concerned with. Let's say, okay, I go over there, I get exposed to all these wonderful lifestyles, these beautiful things to look at, meeting these interesting people, and then I come back here and I'm bitter or pissed that, like,
what you have to decide for yourself is ignorance bliss?
To a certain degree, I believe it is, but go ahead, Rick. What do you
But on
think?
the other side of that, when you get out there, I think it's also interesting to find the root to some of the things that have influenced our culture, right? For example, if you're in Bavaria and you go visit Neuschwanstein Castle, and then you walk around to the other side and you get the frontal view, that's the inspiration to the Disneyland castle, right? Or you go to Beer Fest in Munich or something like that, and you start drinking like a lot of different German beers, and then you realize this is what influenced Miller beers and Budweiser and stuff like that. Now, maybe we commercialize it or bastardize it a bit, but that is the root to our culture. A big part of it comes from Europe or even South America. If you travel down there, you'll find some of that has come up here. So I find that to be interesting, and also not as disappointing, I guess, to counter what you were saying.
That's a good point. I like it. To finish this guy up here, let's talk about coming back into the U.S., so traveling basically in reverse. And before we get into that, I wanted to ask Thomas to tell us about his wonderful CBD story with involving the TSA and how that went down. So I don't know how quickly you can brief that.
I can make
up,
it pretty quick.
Okay.
Talk about welcome back to America.
Yeah, that's what I wanted. That's why I wanted to save this for the end.
And it was partially my fault because I was just not paying attention. I had bought some CBD oil in Amsterdam, and it had like 2% THC or something like 3% or whatever. And I have been using CBD oils here for my knees and stuff for several years, and I usually buy with 0 THC in it. You couldn't do that there. I didn't think about it. I was using it when I was getting ready to leave. I was packing my bags, and I looked at it, and I was like, I should probably just throw it away. Yeah, I'll throw it away. And I don't know what happened. I was moving stuff around, repacking things. Anyway, it ended up in my bag. I probably at one point said, "Oh, just throw it in a bag or whatever."
And this was your carry-on or your check-in?
My carry-on, yeah.
Did you have a check-in?
No.
Okay, so just your carry-on. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah,
sorry.
I strongly advise that for international travel. Your bags are in Turkey, sir. Well, I'm in the UK, so now what? I'm buying all new wardrobe, starting with underwear and socks. And so, it ended up in my bag. So I get off the plane from Amsterdam to Detroit, and there's like 250 people coming off these giant planes, and people are siphoning through. There's like all these cops there, and it was kind of confusing because you go through one thing, you go through this other thing, you got this. I don't know, the whole thing's confusing dealing with the airport international travel, especially the first couple times. And so I go around and then I realize, okay, this is the actual. I talked to somebody and they mentioned. I thought, well, I'm done. I'm through customs. No, there's another set of screening where they don't just talk to you. They rifle through your stuff or whatever. It's another carousel like going in and having your bags checked or whatever.
Wow.
But it's a lot more intense.
Wow.
They also have a whole section over there where they can just tear everything you have apart, which is where they escorted me as soon as they saw me. Guilty of flying with dreads. That's what I'm gonna call it.
Okay. So Thomas has the long dreads.
So they pull me aside, and I'm like, I don't have anything, screw these guys. And they start, immediately, like, you don't even have a choice. They're just like, they just take your bags from you.
Yeah.
They've already taken your passport. They've taken your ID or whatever.
They got you.
And they're like, you sit there, and you're like, you have no choice at this point. And don't argue, just, whatever. And so they start rifling through my bags, and they find the bottle, the CBD bottle. And it was still in the cardboard container. And they're looking at it, and they're like, what's this? And I go, it's CBD oil. It's not illegal. I was like, you guys have recreational here in Michigan, And he was like, you're not in Michigan.
Oh.
And I said, well, where am I at? And he's like, you haven't entered the country yet.
Oh, it's considered
and I was
sovereign
like,
state or
whatever.
something.
I don't know where I was at. Apparently,
Oh.
I thought it was Detroit.
Oh.
But yeah, but you weren't really in the country yet. So he was like, yeah, it was like, so all of a sudden there's like 10 cops. And so they take it, and as they're rifling through the rest of my stuff, because now they have probable cause, because apparently I have CBD oil.
Yeah.
But and again, me being stupid, totally my fault, I should have tossed it because it had 2% or 3% THC in it. So they took it back and tested it in a drug kit.
Wow.
Tested it for...
because they're looking for THC.
For THC.
Okay.
And it came back positive, but a very trace amount. That's what they actually told me.
Okay.
A very trace amount. And I was like, so you found...
You found the 2%?
You found an ounce of oil and a thing, but these are cops. You can't have this discussion with them. They're like, this is what we do. And so they're like, oh, so they're rifling through my stuff. They find a thing of rolling papers. And they're like, well, we found some other stuff too. And this one cop was just being an ass, man. Out of 10, 2 of them were asses, and this one was really an ass. And he was like, well, that's not the only concern. We found other stuff. So he ends up saying that he found traces of marijuana on the rolling papers. I'm like, it's a brand new thing of rolling papers. It's not like you roll it in the paper in the package. Does this guy not even know how drugs are used?
I don't think he's tried it before. Yeah.
And I was like, okay. And he's like, yeah. And so that's a big deal. And blah, blah, blah. I'm like, okay, whatever. And so just keeping it worse. And then what really even made it worse for me was when I was buying small weeds, like a couple grams at a time in Amsterdam, they were giving you these little packages. Well, I had emptied all the packages out, smoked everything, whatever, got rid of it. I was trying to get rid of all the residue. I didn't want to bring it in the country.
Yeah.
Well, apparently a little one of the empty bags was still in one of my bags.
Nice.
So
they
they
did
found
have
that.
residue.
So it had dust residue in it
Sure.
as well. So they were just like, I was like, oh my God, you guys are going to bust me for like 0.0000001 dust gram of weed here? Is this what's going on?
This is obviously the intent to distribute here, man. I mean,
Yeah, I know. I'm smuggling mass amounts of drugs here. And so I said, I'm 2.5 hours, I'm detained. I'm taking
Did you miss your flight?
I missed my connecting flights, both of them.
Jeez.
I go in this room. I was in my socks, t-shirt, and pants. They already have my belt and everything. They search you again. I was like, you guys going to strip search me? It was almost that point where I felt like that was the next move. And I was like, but there was never any like approach to me with handcuffs or detention. It was just sit down, sit here, just wait here.
Going through the formalities.
Going through the formalities.
Searching you.
A lot of people on there. And one of the cops said, well, it's a gray area because there's so many changes right now.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay. Yeah. And so I'm waiting. They go through all this stuff. And, after this whole time, about an hour before they let me go, he says, the one guy says, well, are you okay with a penalty? And I was like, what do you mean? He goes,
As opposed to what?
yeah, that's what I thought. And I didn't really want to ask to what. And I said, what? So me having that as a penalty and I can just pay a penalty? And he was like, yeah, can you pay that? And I said, absolutely. And because it's
How
just,
much?
Yeah, well, I was just like, yeah, what can I do? I was figuring it might be $1,000 or $1,500 or something like that.
Wow.
It was $500. So they came back and they were like, it's a penalty. We're writing this up. And to me, what worries me the most is I don't know what they marked on my passport. There's a branch that controls your passport information with the government and the TSA and all that stuff. Is there a mark on my passport now that this person got stopped?
There could be.
You know what I mean? That's the thing that bothers me the most. But I was like, man, this is stupid. It was totally my fault. I didn't have anything. I don't travel with anything. I'm not distributing or, I'm never going to do something that dumb.
I want to note something too. When this happened, Thomas came back. He actually sent us as he was still traveling, a picture that he took of the receipt. And the interesting thing I found of the receipt, I thought about the receipt, was they didn't charge him $500. They charged him $100 increments 5 times.
Yeah.
You do something like that, and it sounds to me like they're just making up penalties to make money.
I believe it was totally.
Yeah, how do you? I mean, that's like you go to traffic court or whatever, and they just come through with, okay, well, you can go see the judge and dispute this, or we can walk over here to this room as you're talking to the DA. We can walk over this room. We can cut your penalty in half, and you just go about your business. So you're just here to take my money, right? I mean, that's really
Pretty
all
much.
this is about.
Yeah.
So when I saw that they charge it in increments like that, I was like, man, they just have this set up so they can just charge in increments of 100. Just what, $1,500, $1,200? How much
Yeah.
you got, dude?
Yeah.
You look like you don't have that much. $500, dude.
Yeah.
We'll let you go.
Yeah, I thought about
What is
that.
this, the Mexican border?
Yeah, I thought, yeah, right. I thought about that too as it was all going on, and when he was like, "Oh, you can go to the cashier," and I'm like, "We have a cashier set up for this.
course
This
they
is like
do.
the DMV, man."
Want to go ahead and PayPal me that payment?
Oh my god! And I go up there and they're like, "Would you like to pay with card or cash?" And I was like, "I am never giving you guys my credit card number. You're the government, and you're already robbing me in front of my face."
Hold on. So you busted out $500 cash?
I did.
Dude. Yeah, but
And-
that sounds like why you got so much cash on you, buddy.
No, well, I thought about that too. I had $2,000 on me, and they had already messed with me. But $2,000 is nothing when you're traveling
That's
for
true.
half a month in Europe.
That's true. But when they're
mean,
looking for something to question you about,
if you have $10,000 or more, they can do whatever they want. You can have up to $9,999.99.
Wow.
And they cannot say anything to you about what the money you have. They're trying to change those rules, just like the gun laws. There's a whole group in that story. But at this present time, $10,000 is the number. So they didn't even question me about the money. They didn't even care.
Yeah.
They were just like, whatever. I mean, I felt weird about it. I was like, wow, I have like $2,200 cash on me. I wonder if that looks weird. And I was like, wait a minute.
Yeah.
And I didn't really say anything, and they didn't really say anything. And then I had a belt on that had money stashed in it, and I was like, oh god, they're gonna find that or something. So I just pulled it off, and I take my belt off, and I said, well, I have money stashed in my belt, hiding it because I was traveling. I didn't want to get robbed.
Yeah.
And they were like, oh, well, how much is in there? And I said $1,000. And that's probably when they said, so we could take $500 from them.
Yeah. Now they know how much to get from you. Yeah.
Right? Yeah. So I think they just empty your cash out and go, he's got $2,200. Your fine is $1,250.
Yeah. Yeah, I actually follow the TSA on Instagram, and because they post funny things that they recover from people, right? And
I can only imagine.
And then they talk about the laws and their situation, and and they do talk about people traveling with marijuana. And you can get on their Instagram and they say, man, we don't have a problem with this, provided you know where you're traveling and you're traveling with it safely.
Yeah.
Most of the time they say put it in your check-in, and then fly with it like that. And I've flown with firearms before, and as long as you check
if
it
you
in,
check
you
it,
follow their procedures.
Yep.
Nobody even batted an eye at me flying with a firearm. I imagine legal drugs wouldn't be a problem either. But yeah, I wanted you to tell that story because that's your welcome back to America, man.
And what sucked is, Delta was really cool. I'll say that because I went to the Delta office and I said, hey, I don't know what to do. My next connecting flight that I was supposed to be on left 2 hours ago. I was detained in customs for 2.5 hours. I had no choice. I couldn't just say, hey, I got to go. I got a plane. The police weren't going to go, oh, sorry. You're on your way.
Yeah.
That wasn't going to happen. And so she was like, wow, that really sucks. And I was like, yeah, I don't know what to do. I mean, I had 2 connecting flights today. Delta totally worked it out for me. I got another flight from Detroit to LAX 30 minutes after me standing there. I was on another plane. And then the only thing I could do for my flight from LA to Oakland was I had to go to lighter flight. So I had almost a 5-hour delay layover in LAX, which kind of sucked.
Wow. Yeah, that would suck.
So I ended up getting home like 8 hours later because of being detained.
Nice.
So it
That's
turned
And
so it turned
$500
like,
poor.
and $500 poor. So it turned like a 30-hour travel day into like almost a 40-hour travel day.
Oh, man. Okay, the last question I've got for you guys, and this is probably something that, Thomas, you can't really speak to at this point because it's been too quick, but more for Rick, I guess, then. You ever had any trouble reacclimating, especially when you went away for a long time over in Italy? I mean, coming back to U.S., did you feel uncomfortable, different? I don't know, any trouble reacclimating to home?
No, that trip to Italy, I didn't. When I got home, I wanted to be back.
You were tired or ready to be home.
Yeah. But like the more recent trip that I was on, before it was over, I was ready to be home for many reasons. But
and maybe the month isn't long enough. Maybe if you were there for a year, then we could talk about it. I just wanted to see if you guys felt any, I don't know what you might feel.
Well, I do want to say that when I was there was a point where I was there where, especially when I was walking and riding a bike all the time, I was wore out. I was moving, doing things for like a week and a half, and I was like, I probably could have came back 5 or 6 days earlier. I was gone for like 18 days.
Okay.
I probably could have came back 5 or 6 days earlier and been okay with it because I was like, it took a lot out of me. Stay in the last like 4 or 5 days, I was having a problem with my foot, and I spent a lot of it in the hotel. But I was a lot more chill about it. I just stayed in one place. I just stayed in Amsterdam, had a hotel right in the middle of everything. Yeah. I could make a 3-minute walk to get any food I wanted and go sit out on a thing. So I was like, yeah, this is cool. Maybe I should just chill. Maybe the world is just telling me to chill out for a couple of days. So it was awesome.
The world is telling you to just chill, Thomas.
Which we all should do.
That is exactly
in Amsterdam.
Yeah. And on that note, we are out of here, guys. Sorry this ran a little bit long, but there was a lot to cover. And I mean, we probably could have broke this into multiple episodes. We may revisit these topics again because there's a lot to discuss here. Thank you all for listening, and until next time. Show notes and other info can be found at our website, greatdistraction.com. The Great Distraction is listed in iTunes, and we greatly appreciate it when our listeners take the time to look us up and leave us a 5-star rating and review. That helps our show grow and motivates us to continue producing content. If you'd like to get in contact with us, you can do so using the email address, greatdistractionpodcast@gmail.com, or via our website. We're always interested in hearing any thoughts, comments, or questions from our listeners. Keeping up on the latest from us can be done in several different ways. You can add us to your favorite RSS feed tracker. The link is available on our website or in iTunes. Or you can also follow us on Facebook and Twitter. Just search for Great Distraction, one word, no space. As always, thank you for listening, and thank you for all the support.